My name is Chadwick Watkins, and I want to talk to you about the art of manipulation, my survival of molestation. Psychological manipulation is a type of social influence that aims to change the behavior or perception of others through indirect, deceptive, or underhanded tactics by advancing the interests of the manipulator, often at the other's expense. Such methods could be considered exploitative or devious. In the last few years, especially since the Me Too movement, we've had a huge number of people around the world and also in America rectifying and calling out the injustices of their past and demanding change while holding their former perpetrators accountable. It's been kind of a phenomenon in its own way to be emboldened to speak your truth no matter what. Well, when I was growing up in the 80s, it was a different world for me and a lot of people like me. Growing up in a small town, Palmetto, Florida, my mother became pregnant with me at age 14. She had me as a 15-year-old. My mom was born into a big family. She was the youngest of 8 children. My dad was 18 when I arrived, and he had a big family as well. His father served our country in the military, as did his eldest brother, my Uncle Frank. My dad wanted a better life for us, so he went into the military to fight for our country and to secure financial assistance for his son, who was on the way, and his teenage sweetheart, who he eventually wanted to marry. My dad, his life was cut short. He died in the Army 2 weeks after returning home from leave, or returning from leave back to the military. We were told it was pneumonia that claimed his life. He was only 23 years old. And the crazy part about it is that my dad was basically the picture of health when he was on leave. So another story for another day. Before my dad's untimely death, his brother, my uncle, had taken my mom while she was still pregnant with me to see a young charismatic minister who was helping a lot of teenagers and young adults to see a new way of life, introducing them to Christ. This young man would become my godfather and would go on to influence my life as well as the life of a lot of people around the world through his ministry of music, song, healing, and academics. So you have to imagine being raised in this environment was different for sure, but I didn't know it at the time. What I did feel at the time was hope. It was aspirational for a kid who had big dreams, As a 9-year-old, I wanted to be a singer, model, and an actor. All things entertainment. Making others happy was something that gave me a lot of joy. A lot of joy. My travels versus those who lived around me at that time were vastly different. And I had what was considered a liberal arts education. It was also impressed upon me that the world was bigger than my problems. Help someone else. Don't think about yourself. Be selfless. Because, hey, it's not about you. It's about helping others. Those principles were always instilled to me. And looking back, they seem pretty lofty, right? But I felt that it was something worth attaining. When you add to that a school on wheels, travels around the globe by the time I'm 14 years old. I traveled around the US, Africa, and Europe. With all these things happening, I didn't know I was being groomed for the biggest manipulation of my life. So big that I didn't really recognize it and call it for what it was until this year, 2019. I was always told to know is to do. I was molested as a teenager by my mentor, goddad, and bishop. Not only was I molested, it was under the guise of love and teaching me. I also felt that there was this silent coercion of sameness. In public, I was always told you should be all that God created without limits. But in private, I'm to assimilate my ideas and conform to what the good bishop wants whenever he wants it. Because growing up at that time, we were always told he's the almighty hand of God in your life. As you can imagine, things would really go off the rails. Here I am feeling trapped in a world that was supposed to be my deliverance from the bigger world we lived in at the time. You know, at that time, we're talking about the 80s. Mass incarcerations were beginning to be a huge problem for Black and brown people. The spread of AIDS, crack in the inner cities, not to mention living in more rural areas, you had even less assistance. People just didn't even know you existed. And it seems like there was no care for that. Needless to say, there was a lot going on during this time for a lot of people. And for everyone, I should say. I was willing to take this secret to my grave. But I became aware that I was not the only victim of this man's terror. Others had been subjected to this. I realized maybe we were all thinking that each of us was the only one, while that was clearly not the case. The gall to manipulate in the name of good and to mentally lock someone in a jail of their mind with the same feedback loop of, how did I get here? And when will it end? Gotta tell you, it's completely daunting. My reason for sharing this is to inform those who may have seen me growing up and they were thinking, gee, Chadwick has had a great shot. What happened? Well, I started seeing a wonderful therapist this year. And for the first time, I spoke about being molested, as well as a host of other things. What I came to realize was the manipulation has caused me to second guess every person that comes into my life and to at times scrutinize their intentions within myself and to keep a certain distance emotionally. And so when you do that emotionally, you hurt your own self because I didn't want to be manipulated again as I had done before, as had been done before. On one hand, I'm assuring the kid inside of me that, this will never happen to you again. And I will protect you at all costs by not letting anyone in. But as you can imagine, not letting anyone in, you don't let anyone in. You have to let people in at some point. So I was caught in this catch-22. It's not a fun place to be. Not a fun place to be at all. So I find myself here now wanting to reach out. Wanting those who have been manipulated and hurt by this type of behavior. I want you guys to know that you are not by yourself. I was going through it as well. And I thought I was the only one. In fact, I thought I was sort of protecting everyone else. keeping this man's secret so that no one else would have to go through it. But that wasn't the case either. I'm sorry it happened. I'm sorry it happened to all of us. And I just want you guys to know, whoever you are out there, that I'm here. I really am. And my prayers are for you and for all of us. For all of those who are suffering in the Me Too movement, that have not been able to get their story out and to talk about it for their own sanity. As a person who always wanted to stay private, I was taught that, from a young age, to compartmentalize life. While those may have been great attributes, the bottom line is that there's help for all of us. Talk. Let someone know. I'm here. Okay? I'm here. And I'm reaching out. Love you guys.